My name is Camilla, and I am 32 years old. I am sitting in my quiet apartment on a Thursday evening, still trying to process what happened 3 months ago. For 7 years, my niece Lily never spoke a single word. Doctors said she was mute. My sister Diana said she was mute. Everyone believed it. But that night, the moment her parents walked out the door, Lily opened her mouth and spoke. And what she told me saved my life. Before I share this story with you, I would love to know where you are watching from tonight. Drop your location in the comments below. If stories about family secrets and survival resonate with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Trust me, you will want to stay until the end of this one, because what my 7-year-old niece revealed that night changed everything I thought I knew about my own family. To understand what happened that night, I need to take you back to the beginning. I need to tell you about my family, about my sister Diana, and about why I always felt like a stranger in my own home. I grew up in a small town in Ohio. It was one of those places where everybody knew everybody, where secrets were supposed to be impossible to keep. My father was a construction engineer, hardworking and quiet. My mother, Gloria, was an elementary school teacher, respected in the community, always smiling in public. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family, but behind closed doors, things were different. Diana was 6 years older than me. From the day I was born, she was already the star of the family. She got straight A's without trying. She was homecoming queen. She won debate championships and spelling bees. Teachers adored her. Neighbors praised her. And my mother worshipped the ground Diana walked on. I remember being 8 years old, bringing home a drawing I had made in art class. It was a picture of our house, with all 4 of us standing in front holding hands. I was so proud of it. I ran to my mother holding it up like a trophy. She glanced at it for maybe 2 seconds before saying, "Diana won the state spelling bee when she was your age. Maybe you should focus more on your academics." That was my childhood in a nutshell. Everything I did was measured against Diana. Every achievement was dismissed because Diana had done it better, faster, earlier. I learned to shrink myself, to take up less space, to expect less love. When I was 12, something happened that I have never forgotten. We were at our grandmother's house for Thanksgiving. There was this antique vase that had been in our family for 4 generations. It sat on a pedestal in the living room, delicate and irreplaceable. Diana and I were playing near it, which we were not supposed to do. Diana pushed me, just being rough the way older siblings sometimes are. I stumbled backward and knocked the pedestal. The vase fell and shattered into 100 pieces. I remember the silence that followed. Then my grandmother's gasp. Then my mother's voice, sharp as broken glass itself. "What did you do, Camilla?" Before I could explain, Diana spoke. I tried to stop her mom. I told her not to play near it. She would not listen. I looked at Diana, waiting for her to tell the truth. But she just stared back at me with those cold eyes, and I realized she was not going to correct herself. She was going to let me take the blame. Nobody believed me when I tried to explain. Why would they? Diana was the golden child. Diana never lied. Diana was perfect. I was punished for weeks. I had to write apology letters to every family member. And every time I tried to tell the truth, my mother would say, "Stop making excuses, Camilla. Take responsibility for once." That was the day I understood something fundamental about my family. Diana's word would always be truth. Mine would always be questioned. Years passed. Diana went to a prestigious law school on the East Coast. She graduated top of her class, passed the bar on her first try, and joined a high-powered firm before she was 25. I watched from the sidelines as my mother bragged about Diana to anyone who would listen. My daughter, the lawyer. My daughter, the success story. My daughter, the pride of our family. I chose a different path. I fell in love with art, with design, with creating beautiful things from nothing. I studied graphic design, worked freelance, built a modest career doing what I loved. When I told my mother about my first big client, she said, "That is nice, dear. Diana just made partner at her firm. She is the youngest partner in their history." I stopped sharing my achievements after that. When I was 23, my father died suddenly. A heart attack took him in his sleep. He was 61 years old, healthy by all appearances, gone in an instant. I remember getting the phone call from my mother, her voice flat and businesslike. "Your father passed away last night. The funeral is Saturday." That was it. No comfort, no, "we will get through this together." Just facts and dates. My father was the only person in my family who truly saw me. He used to come into my room when I was working on my designs, pull up a chair and just watch. He did not say much, but he did not need to. His presence was enough. Sometimes he would put his hand on my shoulder and say, "You have a gift, Camilla. Do not let anyone make you doubt that." When he died, I felt like I had lost my only ally. The funeral was a blur of black clothes and whispered condolences. Diana gave a beautiful eulogy that made everyone cry. I sat in the back row and felt invisible, which was fitting because that is how I had felt my whole life. 3 years after my father's death, Diana met Marcus at a charity gala. He was a neurosurgeon, tall and handsome, with the kind of confident charm that made people trust him instantly. They dated for a year, then got engaged, then had a wedding that cost more than my annual income. I was the maid of honor, but I might as well have been part of the catering staff. Nobody asked for my input on anything. I just showed up, wore the dress Diana picked, and smiled for photographs. At the reception, Marcus came up to me with 2 glasses of champagne. He handed me one and clinked his glass against mine. "Welcome to the family, Camilla," he said. "Diana has told me so much about you." Something about the way he said it made me uncomfortable. There was a glint in his eye, a subtle smirk at the corner of his mouth. Like he was in on a joke I did not understand. "Thank you," I said. "I hope Diana said nice things." He laughed. "Oh, she did. She told me you are the artistic one, the dreamer. I admire that. It must be nice to live in your own little world." Before I could respond, Diana appeared and pulled him away. I stood there holding my champagne, feeling like I had just been insulted, but not quite able to explain how. A year after the wedding, Lily was born. I drove 4 hours to the hospital to meet my niece. The moment I saw her, I fell in love. She was so small, so perfect, with these enormous brown eyes that seemed to take in everything. When I held her for the first time, she grabbed my finger and would not let go. "Hello, Lily," I whispered. "I am your Aunt Camilla. I am going to love you forever." Diana watched from her hospital bed, her expression unreadable. "Do not get too attached," she said. "We are going to be busy. You will barely see her." But I did see her. I made it a point to visit at least once a month, bringing gifts and spending hours playing with Lily. She was such a happy baby, always laughing, always reaching for me when I walked through the door. Those visits were the highlight of my life. Then, when Lily was 2 years old, everything changed. Diana called me one afternoon, her voice strangely calm. "We have been to the doctors," she said. "Lily is mute. She cannot speak." I was confused. "What do you mean she cannot speak? She was making sounds last time I visited." "She was trying to say words." Diana cut me off. "The doctors say it is selective mutism, a psychological condition. There is nothing they can do. We just have to accept it." Something about her explanation did not sit right with me. I had seen Lily babbling, experimenting with sounds the way all toddlers do. How could she suddenly be unable to speak? "Can I talk to her doctor?" I asked. "Maybe there are treatments or therapies that could help." Diana's voice turned cold. "The doctors have already said there is nothing to be done. Do not question us on this, Camilla. We are her parents. We know what is best." After that, things were different when I visited. Lily still recognized me, still reached for me, but she no longer made sounds. She communicated through gestures, through pointing through her expressive eyes. And every time I looked at her, I saw something that did not make sense. Her eyes were not the eyes of a child who could not speak. They were the eyes of a child who would not speak. There is a difference. But I told myself I was imagining things. I was the family scapegoat, the unreliable one, the dreamer living in my own little world. What did I know about child psychology? Diana was a successful lawyer. Marcus was a brilliant surgeon. If they said Lily was mute, then Lily was mute. For 5 more years, I accepted that lie. I had no idea that the truth was waiting for me, hidden behind my niece's silence, ready to save my life. If my family had already taught me that love came with conditions, my relationship with Derek taught me that it could be taken away completely. I met Derek 3 years ago, in a coffee shop downtown. It was raining outside, one of those sudden afternoon storms that catches you without an umbrella. I was standing near the window watching the water stream down the glass when he walked up beside me. "Beautiful, is it not?" he said. I turned to look at him. He was tall, with kind eyes and a warm smile. He was looking at the rain like it was a painting in a museum. "I always thought rain was kind of depressing," I said. He shook his head. "Rain is just the sky being honest about how it feels. We should all be so brave." Looking back, I should have seen the irony in that statement. Derek talked a lot about honesty. He just did not practice it. We started dating 2 weeks later. Derek was an architect, creative and thoughtful. He understood my work in a way nobody else in my life ever had. When I showed him my designs, he did not compare me to anyone. He just studied them carefully and told me what he loved about each one. After a year together, we moved into an apartment in the city. Those first months of living together were everything I had dreamed a relationship could be. He made me breakfast on Sunday mornings, complicated dishes like eggs Benedict and homemade waffles. We would spend entire weekends exploring the city, visiting art galleries, trying new restaurants, building a life that felt like ours. For the first time, I started to believe that maybe I deserved good things. Maybe I was not the disappointment my family always made me feel like. Maybe Derek saw something in me that was worth loving. Then slowly, things began to change. It started with small things. He would work late more often. He would check his phone constantly, then turn the screen away from me when he typed. When I asked about his day, his answers became vague, generic. Fine, busy, same as usual. I told myself I was being paranoid. Derek loved me. He had told me so hundreds of times. Just because he was busy did not mean anything was wrong, but the feeling would not go away. This gnawing sense that something was off, that the foundation I had built my happiness on was beginning to crack. 6 months ago, I got my answer. I had a client meeting scheduled for 2 o'clock that afternoon, but the client canceled at the last minute, something about a family emergency. I decided to go home early, maybe surprise Derek with dinner. When I pulled into our parking garage, I noticed an unfamiliar car in the guest spot. A silver sedan I did not recognize. I thought maybe Derek had a friend over, someone from work perhaps. I took the elevator up, unlocked the front door, and stepped inside. The apartment was quiet except for soft music coming from the bedroom. Our bedroom. My heart knew before my brain did. I walked down the hallway like I was moving through water, every step slow and heavy. I pushed open the bedroom door. Derek was there. And so was Megan. She worked at his firm. I had met her at company parties, invited her to our home for dinner. She had complimented my cooking, my designs, my apartment, all while she was sleeping with my partner. They did not even notice me at first. I stood in the doorway for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Then Megan looked up and screamed. Derek scrambled off the bed, grabbing for his clothes. "Camilla," he said, his voice panicked. "This is not what it looks like." I could not speak. I could not move. I just stood there watching the man I loved destroy everything we had built together. When I finally found my voice, I asked only one question. How long? Derek looked at Megan, then back at me. 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of lies. Half a year of him holding me at night while hiding another woman in his heart. I expected him to apologize, to beg for forgiveness. Instead, he got defensive. "You know what, Camila? This is your fault. You are too needy, too sensitive. Too much. I have been unhappy for months, but you were too wrapped up in your own world to notice." Megan said nothing. She just gathered her clothes and slipped past me, disappearing out the front door. I packed my things that night. I found a small apartment in the suburbs, far from the city, far from Derek, far from everything that reminded me of the life I thought I was building. I told myself I was being strong, that I was taking control of my situation. But the truth is, I was falling apart. The first month after the breakup, I barely functioned. I would sit at my computer, staring at design projects I could not bring myself to start. I would go to the kitchen to make food, then stand in front of the refrigerator for 20 minutes before walking away. I lost 15 pounds because eating felt like too much effort. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together. I replayed every moment of our relationship, searching for signs I had missed, torturing myself with what ifs and if onlys. My phone would ring sometimes, friends checking in, worried about my silence. I let every call go to voicemail. I did not want to talk. I did not want to explain. I just wanted to disappear. By the 3rd month, the darkness had settled in completely. I stopped seeing the point of anything. My career felt meaningless. My apartment felt like a prison. Even the things I used to love, my art, my designs, my creative work, felt hollow and pointless. I started having thoughts I had never had before. Not active thoughts of hurting myself, but passive ones. Wondering what it would be like to simply not exist. Imagining how peaceful it would be to just stop. I did not want to die exactly. I just did not want to keep living like this. Then Harper showed up. Harper had been my best friend since college. We met in an art history class freshman year and bonded over our shared hatred of the professor. She was studying nursing practical and grounded where I was dreamy and artistic. Somehow we balanced each other out. She flew in from Texas without telling me she was coming. Just showed up at my door one morning with 2 suitcases and a bag of groceries. "You look terrible," she said, pushing past me into the apartment. "Thanks," I muttered. "I love you too." She ignored my sarcasm and went straight to the kitchen. "I am making you breakfast. Then you are going to shower. Then we are going to talk. Harper, I really do not want to." She turned and looked at me with those piercing eyes of hers. "Camilla, I have known you for 12 years. I have seen you at your best and your worst, but I have never seen you like this. So you can either let me help you, or I can call your mother and tell her I am worried about you." The threat worked. The last thing I needed was Gloria calling to tell me how disappointed she was that I could not even handle a breakup like a normal person. Over breakfast, I told Harper everything. About Derek, about the affair, about the darkness that had settled over me like a fog I could not escape. She listened without interrupting, just nodding occasionally, her face serious. When I finished, she reached across the table and took my hand. "Camilla, you are not broken. You are hurt. There is a difference. And hurting this much does not make you weak. It makes you human." I started crying, the first real tears I had shed since the breakup. All the emotion I had been holding inside came flooding out, and Harper just held my hand and let me release it. She stayed for a week. She made me eat 3 meals a day. She dragged me outside for walks around the neighborhood. She sat with me while I stared at my unfinished projects and helped me find the courage to start working again. On her last day before she left for the airport, she hugged me tight. "Promise me something," she said. "What? Promise me that if it gets bad again, you will call me, day or night. I do not care. You call me and I will be here. I promised." After she left, things were better. Not good, but better. I started eating regularly. I started sleeping more than 3 hours a night. I even finished a project for a client, my first completed work in months. But the darkness was still there, lurking at the edges. I was managing it, but barely. I was surviving, not living. Then exactly 2 weeks after Harper left, my phone rang. It was Diana. "Camilla," she said, her voice brisk and businesslike as always. "I need a favor." I was surprised. Diana never called unless she wanted something, but she usually made our mother do the asking. For her to call directly meant she must have been desperate. "What is it? Marcus and I have an important event this Saturday. A fundraiser for the hospital. We need someone to watch Lily for the evening." I hesitated. Diana had barely spoken to me since our father's funeral. She certainly had not asked me to babysit in over a year. "What about your usual sitter? She is not available." Diana's voice carried an edge of impatience. "Look, can you do it or not? Lily has been asking about you." That last part surprised me. Lily asking about me. She could not speak. How would Diana know what Lily wanted? But I pushed the question aside. The truth was, I missed Lily terribly. And honestly, I needed a reason to leave my apartment, a purpose, even if it was just for one night. "Okay," I said. "I will be there." "Good. Be at our house by 5:30. We are leaving at 6. She hung up without saying goodbye. Classic Diana. I had no idea that Saturday would change my life forever. I had no idea that my 7-year-old niece had been waiting for this moment, waiting for the right person, the right time to finally break her silence. I had no idea that she was going to save my life. Saturday arrived gray and overcast. I spent the drive to Diana's house, trying to shake the fog that had been following me for months. The car radio played soft music I did not really hear. The suburban streets passed by in a blur of perfectly manicured lawns and expensive cars. Diana and Marcus lived in one of those neighborhoods where everything looked too perfect to be real. Every house was worth at least $1 million. Every driveway held a luxury vehicle. Every yard was landscaped by professionals. It was the kind of place where people smiled at you in public and whispered about you behind closed doors. I pulled into their circular driveway at exactly 5:25. The house loomed before me, a 3-story colonial with white columns and black shutters. It looked like something from a magazine, beautiful and cold. Diana opened the door before I could knock. She was wearing a deep blue evening gown, her hair swept up in an elegant twist. Diamonds sparkled at her ears and throat. She looked perfect as always. "You are early," she said. It was not a compliment. I thought early was better than late. She stepped aside to let me in. The foyer was all marble and crystal, a chandelier hanging overhead like a frozen waterfall. The house smelled like expensive candles and fresh flowers. Marcus appeared from the living room, adjusting his cufflinks. He was wearing a black tuxedo that probably cost more than my monthly rent. When he saw me, he smiled that smooth, practiced smile of his. "Camilla," he said, "thank you for doing this on such short notice." "No problem," I replied. "Where is Lily?" He gestured toward the staircase. "Up in her room. She knows you are coming. She has been drawing all afternoon." Drawing? I smiled at that. Lily and I shared a love of art. Even without words, we had always communicated through pictures. Diana handed me a sheet of paper. "Here are the rules for the evening. Dinner is already prepared. You just need to heat it up. Lily eats at 6, bath at 7, bed at 8. No television, no sugar after 5. She pointed to each rule as she spoke like she was briefing a subordinate on a mission. I folded the paper and put it in my pocket. "Got it." Diana looked at me for a long moment. Her eyes traveled over my face, taking in the dark circles, the weight I had lost. She did not ask if I was okay. She just said, "Try not to burn the house down." Before I could respond, she was out the door, Marcus closed behind. I watched their Mercedes back out of the driveway and disappear down the street. The house was silent. I stood in the foyer for a moment, adjusting to the quiet. The chandelier tinkled softly in some unfelt breeze. The grandfather clock in the living room ticked steadily. Otherwise, nothing. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs. I looked up and saw Lily standing at the top of the staircase. She was wearing a simple white dress, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked smaller than I remembered, thinner too. Her large brown eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, climbing the stairs toward her. "I missed you." She did not move, just watched me approach with that strange, serious expression. When I reached her, I knelt down so we were at eye level. "I brought art supplies," I said, holding up the bag I had packed. "Colored pencils, markers, watercolors. I thought maybe we could draw together." Lily looked at the bag, then back at me. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Something that looked almost like relief. She reached out and took my hand. We went to the living room. I spread out the art supplies on the coffee table, and we sat on the floor together. I started sketching, talking softly, as I drew. I told her about my apartment, about the birds that visited my balcony, about the funny-shaped cloud I had seen on the drive over. Lily listened, her head tilted, watching my pencil move across the paper. Then she picked up her own pencil and began to draw. At first, I did not pay much attention to what she was creating. I was too focused on trying to make her comfortable, trying to reconnect after months of absence. But gradually, I noticed her drawing taking shape. It was a house. A big house with lots of windows. Dark scribbles covered most of the windows, making them look like empty eyes. In front of the house stood a small figure, a girl with dark hair. Behind her, looming over her, was a large black shape. Not quite a person, more like a shadow with arms. "What is that, sweetie?" I asked, pointing to the shadow. Lily did not answer. She just kept drawing, adding more details. A smaller figure off to the side. A woman, I realized, standing far away from the house, separated from everyone else. "Is that me?" I asked, pointing to the small figure. Lily looked up at me. Her eyes were so intense, so serious. She nodded once, then went back to drawing. A chill ran down my spine. I did not understand what her drawing meant, but something about it felt like a warning. I decided to take a break from art. "Let me get dinner started," I said, standing up. "You must be hungry." We went to the kitchen. The meal Diana had prepared was in the refrigerator, some kind of chicken casserole in a glass dish. I put it in the oven to heat up and started setting the table. As I moved around the kitchen, I noticed things. Small things that did not quite add up. The windows all had extra locks, the kind you see in high-security buildings. Not just regular latches, but bolts that could only be opened from the outside. The knife block on the counter was missing several knives. The drawers where you would normally find scissors or sharp objects were locked. A camera in the corner of the ceiling pointing at the kitchen table. Another camera in the hallway. A third above the back door. Who needed this much security inside their own home? I opened the refrigerator to get Lily some water and saw the door of the medicine cabinet left slightly ajar. Through the crack, I could see rows of orange prescription bottles, far more than any normal family would have. I reached out to close it, and one of the labels caught my eye. Diazepam, 50 milligrams. I knew that drug. Harper had mentioned it once when talking about her work at the hospital. It was a powerful sedative, the kind prescribed for severe anxiety or muscle spasms. A 50 milligram dose was significant. Why would Diana or Marcus need sedatives this strong? I closed the cabinet and stepped back, my heart beating faster. Something was wrong here. I could feel it in my bones. Dinner was quiet. Lily ate her food slowly, methodically pausing between each bite to look up at me. She seemed to be studying my face, searching for something. Trust, maybe? Or courage. When we finished eating, I washed the dishes while Lily dried them. Such a simple domestic moment. Aunt and niece working together in comfortable silence. If you had seen us from outside the window, you would have thought everything was perfectly normal, but it was not normal. And Lily was about to show me exactly how wrong everything really was. After we finished cleaning up, I took Lily upstairs for her bath. Her bedroom was on the 3rd floor at the end of a long hallway. When we reached her door, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The door had a bolt on it, not on the inside like a normal bedroom lock, on the outside. Why would anyone put a lock on the outside of a child's door? The only reason to do that would be to keep someone in. I said nothing. I helped Lily with her bath, then got her into her pajamas. Pink ones, with little stars. She looked so small, so vulnerable. My heart ached for her. It was 7:45 when I finished reading her a bedtime story. The house was completely silent. Diana had said they would be back around 11. I had hours left alone with Lily. I was about to say goodnight when Lily grabbed my hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong for a 7-year-old. She held on tight, her eyes locked on mine. And then she spoke. Aunt Camilla. Her voice was small and hoarse, like it had not been used in years. Because it had not been used in years. You have to leave. Tonight. Before they come back. I could not move. Could not breathe. For 7 years, this child had not spoken a single word. And now here in the darkness of her bedroom, she was talking to me. Lily, I whispered, you can talk. She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. They made me pretend. They said if I ever talked, they would send me away. To a hospital. A bad place where nobody would ever find me. Who, sweetheart? Who made you pretend mommy and daddy? The words hit me like a physical blow. My sister. My sister had forced her own daughter to pretend she was mute for 5 years. Why? What could possibly justify doing that to a child? Lily squeezed my hand tighter. I heard them talking. About you. They have a plan. Tonight. You cannot be here when they get back. What kind of plan? What are they going to do? Lily's voice dropped to a whisper. They want to hurt you, Aunt Camilla. They want to make it look like you did it yourself. Because you are sad. Because nobody would be surprised. The room spun around me. I grabbed the edge of Lily's bed to steady myself. This could not be real. This had to be some kind of nightmare. But Lily's hand in mine was warm and solid. Her eyes were clear and certain. This was real. This was happening. And my sister was planning to kill me. I stared at Lily, my mind racing to catch up with what she had just told me. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down into an abyss I had not known existed. My own sister wanted me dead. My own sister had been planning this. Lily, I whispered, my voice shaking. Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure about what you heard? She nodded solemnly. I am always quiet. They forget I am there. They talk about things in front of me because they think I cannot tell anyone. Her small face was so serious, so much older than her 7 years. I have been listening for a long time, Aunt Camilla. I know things. What things? What else do you know? Lily glanced toward the door, as if expecting her parents to materialize there. Then she looked back at me. I know Daddy does bad things at the hospital. People come in and they do not come out. He says he is helping them, but I saw his face once when he was talking about it. He was smiling. My blood ran cold. What do you mean people do not come out? They die, Aunt Camilla. They die and Daddy gets money. I do not understand all of it. But I know it is wrong. And I know that is why they made me stop talking. Because I said something once in front of a visitor. I was only 3. I did not know I was not supposed to talk about what I saw. What did you see? Lily's eyes welled with tears. I saw Daddy giving something to a woman. A needle. She was asleep in a bed at our house. It was late at night, and I came downstairs because I had a bad dream. The woman never woke up. She was gone the next morning, and Mommy and Daddy told me I dreamed the whole thing. But I did not dream it. I know I did not. I felt like I was going to be sick. A woman. A needle. Gone the next morning. My brother-in-law was not just a successful surgeon. He was a murderer, and Diana knew. Diana was part of it. The threat started after that, Lily continued. They showed me pictures of children locked in rooms, children screaming. They said that is where I would go if I ever told anyone what I saw. They said they would tell everyone I was crazy, that I imagined things that I needed to be put away. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. So I stopped talking. I did not know what else to do. I was only 3. My heart broke for her. A 3-year-old child terrorized into silence by her own parents. Forced to carry this burden alone for 5 years. The cruelty of it was beyond comprehension. Why are you telling me now? I asked softly. Why tonight? Lily looked at me with those old wise eyes. Because you are in danger. Because I heard Mommy and Daddy talking 3 days ago. They were in his study, and they did not know I was in the closet. I hide there sometimes when they are fighting. What did they say? They said you were sad. That you were falling apart after your boyfriend left. Mommy said nobody would be surprised if something happened to you. That everyone already thought you were unstable. She used a word I did not understand. Depressive. The word hit me like a slap. Diana knew about my mental state. She knew I had been struggling. And instead of caring, instead of trying to help, she saw it as an opportunity. They said if something happened to you, she continued, all the money would go to Mommy. Grandpa's money. It is a lot of money. Daddy needs it because some people are asking questions about the hospital. Grandpa's money I did not understand. What money? You do not know. Lily looked surprised. Grandpa left you money when he died. A lot of money. Mommy has been keeping it. She told people it was in a trust, and she was managing it, but it is supposed to be yours. I felt dizzy. My father had left me money. Diana had been hiding it from me for 9 years. I knew she had taken over managing the family finances after his death, but I never questioned it. I never asked for details.
I just assumed there was not much to manage. How much money? Lily shook her head. I do not know the numbers, but Daddy said it was enough to make their problems go away. He said they just needed to deal with you first. Deal with me. Such a casual phrase for such a horrific plan. I looked around Lily's room, seeing it with new eyes. The lock on the outside of the door. The bars on the windows painted white to look decorative, but still bars nonetheless. This was not a child's bedroom. It was a prison cell. What were they going to do tonight? I asked, forcing myself to focus. What was the plan? Lily swallowed hard. The medicine cabinet. The one in the bathroom downstairs. They put something in there. Something that makes you sleepy. They were going to put it in your drink. And then... She could not finish. She did not need to. I understood. They were going to drug me, make it look like a suicide. Maybe an overdose. Maybe something else.
But the end result would be the same. I would be dead, and Diana would inherit everything our father left behind. How could she? The question tore out of me before I could stop it. She is my sister. How could she do this? Lily shook her head. I do not know. I do not understand Mommy. She is nice to other people, but she is different at home. She has 2 faces. Her voice dropped. She scares me. That was the moment everything crystallized. Whatever Diana had become, whatever darkness lived inside her, I could not save her from it. I could not reason with her, or appeal to whatever sisterly bond might have existed between us. That bond had died years ago, if it had ever truly existed at all. But I could save Lily, and I could save myself. I need to see the evidence, I said, standing up. I need to see what they have been hiding. Lily looked nervous. Daddy's study, in the basement. But it is locked. He always locks it. Do you know the code? She nodded slowly. I watched him put it in once. He did not see me. It is 4271. I took her hand. Show me. We crept downstairs, moving as quietly as possible. Even though Diana and Marcus were gone, even though we were alone in the house, I could not shake the feeling of being watched. The cameras, of course. They probably recorded everything. The basement door was at the end of the main hallway. It was heavy oak with an electronic keypad where a normal doorknob would be. I punched in the code Lily had given me, 4271. The lock clicked. The door swung open. The basement stairs were dimly lit by a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. We descended carefully, Lily gripping my hand so tight her knuckles turned white. At the bottom of the stairs, we found Marcus's study. It was larger than I expected, lined with bookshelves and file cabinets. A massive oak desk dominated the center of the room. Everything was obsessively organized, each book aligned perfectly, each folder labeled precisely. "Where did you see the papers?" I asked Lily. She pointed to the desk, the bottom drawer, on the right. "He keeps it locked, but the key is in the fake book on the third shelf." I found the fake book, a hollow copy of some medical textbook. Inside was a small brass key. I used it to unlock the drawer. Inside I found everything. Medical records with handwritten notes in the margins. Lists of patient names with dates beside them, some circled in red. Bank statements showing large deposits from accounts I did not recognize. Correspondence with lawyers about investigations that had been quietly closed. And at the bottom of the stack, a folder marked Estate. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was my father's will. Not the version I had seen 9 years ago, the one that left almost everything to Diana as the eldest child. This was different.
This version left 40% of his estate to me, in a trust to be distributed when I turned 30. I was 32 years old. I should have received this money 2 years ago. There was more. A trust document showing Diana as the manager of the fund. Bank statements showing the account balance. $473,000. My father had left me nearly $500,000, and Diana had been sitting on it for almost a decade. At the bottom of the folder was a recent letter from Diana's lawyer. It discussed something called a survivor clause. If I died before receiving my inheritance, the money would revert to Diana as the surviving family member. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Diana had been stealing from me for years. Now Marcus was in trouble, investigations closing in on whatever horrors he had been committing at the hospital. They needed money. My money.
And the only thing standing between them and nearly $500,000 was me. I started photographing everything. Every document, every record, every piece of evidence I could find. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to take some pictures twice. "We need to go," I told Lily. "Right now, before they come back." She nodded. "I know." I grabbed the most damning documents, stuffed them into my bag. Then we ran back up the stairs through the house toward the back door. We were almost there when I realized my car keys were gone. I had left them on the table by the front entrance when I arrived. Now the table was empty. Diana, she must have taken them when I was not looking. "We cannot drive," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "We will have to walk. Where will we go?" "To the bus stop, and then to someone who can help us." I wrapped Lily in her coat, grabbed my bag with all the evidence, and led her out the back door into the cold night air. The neighborhood was quiet, every house dark and peaceful. Nobody knew what was happening. Nobody could help us. We started walking. The night was cold, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and makes you feel like you will never be warm again. Lily walked beside me, her small hand gripping mine, her breath making little clouds in the air. "How far to the bus stop?" she asked. "About half a mile. We will be there soon." I tried to sound confident, but inside I was terrified. Every car that passed made me flinch, expecting to see Diana's black Mercedes pulling up beside us. Every shadow seemed threatening. Every sound made my heart race. We cut through a neighbor's yard, staying away from the streetlights. The grass was wet with dew, soaking through my shoes. Lily did not complain, just kept walking, her eyes fixed straight ahead. "Are you okay?" I asked her. She nodded. I have been waiting for this for a long time, for someone to believe me. Those words broke my heart. 5 years this child had waited. 5 years of silence, of fear, of hoping someone would finally listen. And I had been right there visiting regularly, suspecting nothing. "I am sorry," I said. "I am so sorry I did not see it sooner." She squeezed my hand. "You see it now? That is what matters." We reached the main road and followed it toward the bus stop. A car passed us, a red sedan, not Diana's Mercedes. I exhaled slowly. The bus stop was nothing more than a small shelter with a bench inside. A schedule posted on the wall told me the last bus of the night was due in 12 minutes. We sat down to wait, Lily pressed close against my side. "Where are we going?" she asked. "To my friend Harper's apartment. She will help us figure out what to do next." "Is Harper nice?" "She is the best person I know." Lily was quiet for a moment. "Do you think Mommy and Daddy will go to jail?" I did not know how to answer that. The evidence I had photographed was damning, but I knew how the world worked. Rich, powerful people had ways of escaping consequence. Marcus was a respected surgeon. Diana was a successful attorney. They had connections, resources, lawyers. But they also had a daughter who was willing to testify against them. A daughter who had been silenced for years and was finally ready to speak. "I think they are going to have to answer for what they have done," I said carefully. "Whatever happens, I am going to make sure you are safe. Promise, I promise." The bus arrived exactly on schedule, its headlights cutting through the darkness like beacons of hope. We climbed aboard, paid the fare, and found seats in the back where we could watch both the door and the road behind us. As the bus pulled away, I looked out the window at the neighborhood disappearing behind us. Somewhere back there was the house where I had grown up feeling unloved. Somewhere back there was my sister plotting my death. I had spent my whole life trying to earn my family's approval, trying to be good enough, successful enough, lovable enough. And all that time, my sister had been seeing me not as family, but as an obstacle to be removed. It should have broken me. A few months ago, it would have. But sitting on that bus with Lily beside me, I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Purpose, strength, the fierce determination to protect this child who had risked everything to save me. The bus ride took 20 minutes. Harper's apartment was in a modest complex on the east side of the city, the kind of place working professionals lived when they cared more about function than appearances. I had been here dozens of times over the years for movie nights and birthday parties and crisis interventions. Tonight was definitely a crisis intervention. I knocked on Harper's door at 9:43. She opened it almost immediately, as if she had been waiting. "Camilla." Her eyes went wide when she saw Lily beside me. "What is going on? Is that your niece?" "We need help," I said. "Can we come in?" Harper stepped aside without another question. That was one of the things I loved about her. She did not waste time with unnecessary questions when action was needed. We went inside. Harper's apartment was warm and cluttered, full of books and plants and comfortable furniture that did not match. She cleared space on the couch for us, then disappeared into the kitchen. She came back with hot chocolate for Lily and tea for me. Then she sat in the armchair across from us and said, "Tell me everything." I did. I told her about Lily speaking for the first time, about what she had witnessed as a 3-year-old, about the threats that had kept her silent, about the plan to kill me and make it look like suicide, about the evidence in Marcus's study and the inheritance Diana had been hiding from me. Harper listened without interrupting. Her face grew more serious with each revelation. When I finished, she sat in silence for a long moment. Then she said, "We need to go to the police. I know, but Diana is a lawyer. She has connections everywhere. What if they do not believe us?" Harper shook her head. "We have evidence. We have documentation. And most importantly," she looked at Lily, "we have a witness who can tell them exactly what has been happening." Lily spoke up, then her voice stronger than before. "I can tell them everything. I remember it all. Every conversation I overheard. Every threat they made. I kept it all in my head because I knew someday someone would ask." Harper stared at her with something like awe. "You are incredibly brave," she said. "Do you know that?" Lily shrugged. "I was scared for a long time, but being scared and being brave are not opposites. You can be both." I pulled her close, overwhelmed by how wise this 7-year-old was. She had been through more than any child should ever experience, and somehow she had emerged with her spirit intact. "Harper," I said, "we cannot go to just any police station. Diana knows people. Marcus knows people. We need to find someone we can trust." Harper nodded thoughtfully. "I know someone. A journalist. He investigates medical scandals, corruption, that sort of thing. His name is Nathan Brooks. He has brought down dirty doctors and corrupt hospital administrators before. If there is anyone who can help us build a case that cannot be swept under the rug, it is him. Can you call him right now, please?" Harper pulled out her phone and stepped into the hallway. I could hear her voice low and urgent explaining the situation. After a few minutes, she came back. He wants to meet us tomorrow morning. His office, 9 o'clock. He said if what we have is as significant as it sounds, he can connect us with the right people in law enforcement. Tomorrow morning. That meant surviving the night. What about tonight, I asked. Diana must know something is wrong by now. She could be looking for us. You will stay here, Harper said firmly. Both of you. I have a pull-out couch and a spare bedroom. Nobody knows you are here. Nobody will find you. Lily tugged my sleeve. What if they check with your friends? Harper smiled at her. I am an overnight nurse, sweetheart. Nobody expects me to be home at night. And even if they came here, they would find locked doors and no one answering. We are safe. Safe. The word felt foreign. I could not remember the last time I had truly felt safe. Harper made up the spare bedroom for Lily. It was small with lavender walls and a window that looked out onto a quiet courtyard. Not fancy like her room at Diana's house, but somehow much more welcoming. I sat with Lily until she fell asleep. Her breathing evened out, her face relaxed, and for the first time she looked like the child she actually was. Not a silent prisoner, not a witness to horrors. Just a little girl exhausted from the biggest night of her life. I kissed her forehead and crept back to the living room. Harper was waiting with 2 cups of coffee. She handed me one, and we sat together in the quiet. How are you holding up? She asked. I do not know, I admitted. A few hours ago, I was barely surviving my own life. Now I have a niece to protect, and evidence of murder to deliver, and a sister who wants me dead. It is a lot. Harper reached over and took my hand. You are not alone, Camilla. Whatever happens next, I am with you. And we are going to make sure justice is served. I squeezed her hand back. Thank you for everything. I do not know what I would do without you. You will never have to find out. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking our coffee, watching the city lights twinkle through the window. Somewhere out there, Diana was probably discovering that Lily and I were gone. She was probably panicking, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. Let her panic, I thought. Let her feel even a fraction of the fear she inflicted on her own daughter. Tomorrow, the real fight would begin. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt something that had been missing from my life. Hope. I barely slept that night. Every sound made me jump. Every creak of the building settling felt like footsteps approaching. But dawn came eventually, gray light filtering through Harper's curtains. And with it came a sense of grim determination. I checked on Lily first thing. She was already awake, sitting up in bed looking out the window. Good morning, I said softly. She turned to me with a small smile. I slept better than I have in years. No cameras watching, no locks on the door. The simplicity of that statement gutted me. Basic safety felt like luxury to this child. Harper made us breakfast. Eggs and toast and fresh fruit, simple but nourishing. Lily ate more than I had ever seen her eat, as if her body was finally accepting that it was safe to relax. At 8:30, we drove to Nathan's office. He worked out of a converted warehouse in the Arts District, all exposed brick and high windows. The nameplate by the door read, Brooks Investigative Journalism. Nathan met us in the lobby. He was in his late 40s with graying hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He shook my hand firmly and knelt down to greet Lily at eye level. You must be the brave one Harper told me about, he said. Lily nodded. I am ready to tell you what I know. Nathan smiled. Good. Because what you know might save a lot of lives. We went upstairs to his office. I laid out all the evidence I had photographed, plus the documents I had taken from Marcus's study. Nathan examined each one carefully, asking occasional questions, taking notes. When I finished presenting everything, he leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. This is big, he said. Bigger than I expected. If what your niece says is true, we are talking about multiple homicides disguised as medical procedures. We are talking about insurance fraud, inheritance theft, and conspiracy to commit murder. This is not just one bad doctor. This is a criminal enterprise operating inside a respected hospital. What do we do? I asked. Nathan folded his hands. First, we need to verify as much of this as possible independently. I have contacts who can check hospital records, autopsy reports, financial transactions. If the pattern holds, we will have enough to bring in federal investigators. Federal, not local police. This is too big for local police, and frankly, too risky. Your sister is a lawyer with connections. Your brother-in-law is a prominent surgeon. Local authorities could be compromised intentionally or not. Federal investigators are harder to influence. He looked at Lily. In the meantime, I need you to tell me everything you remember. Every conversation you overheard, every strange thing you witnessed. Can you do that? Lily sat up straighter. I can do that. For the next 2 hours, Lily talked. She described the night she had seen Marcus with the woman and the needle. She recounted conversations between her parents about money, about problems at the hospital, about dealing with witnesses. She explained how they had threatened her, the pictures they had shown her, the fear they had instilled. Through it all, Nathan recorded everything. His expression remained professional, but I could see the horror in his eyes. This child had been carrying an impossible burden for half her life. When she finished, Nathan turned off the recorder. Thank you, Lily. You are incredibly courageous. Will they go to jail? She asked. That is our goal. Yes. Good. She paused. I do not want to go back there. Ever. Nathan looked at me. We will make sure of it. The rest of the day passed in a blur of phone calls and meetings. Nathan connected us with a federal prosecutor who specialized in healthcare fraud and abuse. She listened to our story with the same mixture of professionalism and barely concealed outrage that Nathan had shown. By evening, an investigation was officially open. Diana and Marcus did not know it yet, but their world was about to collapse. 3 days later, the police came for them. I was not there when it happened, but Nathan called me with updates. Diana and Marcus were at home when federal agents arrived with search warrants. Marcus tried to destroy evidence, but it was too late. They found everything, more than I had discovered. Patient files, financial records, a second safe with cash and burner phones, even security footage from their own cameras that documented their conversations about me. Diana tried to use her legal training to stall to negotiate to find loopholes, but the evidence was overwhelming. Both of them were arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit murder fraud, and in Marcus's case, 3 counts of second-degree murder. Lily and I watched the news coverage from Harper's apartment. Diana's face appeared on the screen, handcuffed, being led into a police car. She looked different than I had ever seen her, small, frightened, human. I expected to feel satisfaction, vindication, maybe even joy. Instead, I just felt tired and sad. Sad for the sister I had never really known. Sad for the family that had been broken long before any of this happened. Lily squeezed my hand. It is over, she said. I shook my head. Not yet, sweetheart, but it will be soon. The trial came 4 months later. Diana faced a separate proceeding from Marcus, but both resulted in convictions. Marcus was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Diana was convicted of conspiracy and accessory charges. She received 12 years. During the trial, my mother, Gloria, attended every day. She sat behind Diana, a show of support that surprised no one. When Diana was sentenced, Gloria collapsed in tears. She had to be helped out of the courtroom by bailiffs. She called me that night, not to apologize, not to ask how I was doing, just to tell me that I had destroyed our family. You took everything from your sister, she said. You always were jealous of her. I hope you are happy. I hung up the phone and did not answer when she called back. Some relationships cannot be saved. Some bridges are burned not by fire, but by years of neglect, by cruelty disguised as love, by indifference dressed as duty. My mother had chosen Diana over me from the day I was born. That choice had led us here, and I was done hoping she would change. But I was not alone. Harper stood by me through all of it. Nathan became a friend as well as an ally. And Lily, the child who had broken her silence to save my life, became my daughter in every way that mattered. The custody hearing was brief. With both her parents incarcerated and no other family willing to take her, Lily was placed in my care. The judge asked if I was prepared for the responsibility. I am, I said. I have never been more prepared for anything. Lily smiled at me from across the courtroom. For the first time in 7 years, her smile reached her eyes. 1 year has passed since that night. Lily and I live in a small house now in a quiet neighborhood far from the shadows of her old life. It has a garden where we grow tomatoes and sunflowers. It has a porch swing where we sit on summer evenings and watch fireflies dance in the twilight. It has a front door without cameras, without locks on the outside, without fear. Lily goes to school now, 2nd grade. She talks constantly, making up for all the years of silence. Her teachers say she is brilliant, creative, and possesses an emotional intelligence far beyond her age. I tell them she earned that intelligence the hard way. She still has nightmares sometimes. She still flinches at loud noises. She still checks to make sure doors are unlocked from the inside. Healing from trauma is not a straight line. It is a winding path with setbacks and breakthroughs and everything in between. But she is healing. Every day, in small ways and large ones, she is becoming the child she was always meant to be. As for me, I have changed too. I started therapy 6 months ago. For the first time in my life, I am talking about my childhood, about feeling invisible, about seeking validation from people who were never going to give it, about the ways I abandoned myself in order to be loved. It is hard work. Some sessions leave me exhausted, wrung out like a dishcloth. But slowly, I am learning things I should have learned decades ago. My worth is not determined by my mother's approval. My value does not depend on being better than Diana. I am allowed to take up space. I am allowed to have needs. I am allowed to exist fully without apology. I started my own design studio. It is small, just me and 2 part-time assistants, but it is mine. I take projects that interest me and say no to ones that do not. I create art that makes me happy. And when clients compliment my work, I accept the praise instead of deflecting it. Harper visits every weekend. She brings cookies and casseroles and her particular brand of no-nonsense wisdom. Lily calls her Aunt Harper and saves all her best drawings to show her. We have become a chosen family, the 3 of us, bound not by blood but by something stronger. My mother has not spoken to me since Diana's sentencing. At first, her silence hurt, another rejection to add to the pile. But over time, I have come to see it as a gift. Her absence allows me to breathe. Her silence gives me space to define myself without her voice in my head telling me all the ways I fall short. I think about Diana sometimes. Not often, but sometimes. I wonder if she ever thinks about what she did, if she feels remorse, if she lies awake at night replaying the choices that led her to a prison cell. I do not hate her. That surprises me sometimes. I thought I would. But hate takes energy, and I have better uses for my energy now. I have a child to raise, a life to build, a future to create. Lily asked me once if I was angry at her grandmother for choosing Diana over me. We were on the porch swing watching the sunset, and the question caught me off guard. I thought about it for a long moment before answering. I used to be angry, I told her. I spent a lot of years being angry. But then I realized something. Baba Gloria does not know how to love properly. She never learned, and you cannot be angry at someone for not giving you something they do not have. Lily considered this. That is sad. It is, I agreed. But here is the thing I have learned. We cannot control how other people love us. We can only control how we love ourselves and how we love the people who matter to us. I pulled her closer. And I'm going to love you the right way, I promise. She snuggled against my side. I know you will. You already do. That moment is what I think about when the old doubts creep in, when I wonder if I am enough, when the voices from my childhood try to tell me I am worthless, unlovable, invisible. I think about Lily's face when she said those words, about the trust in her eyes, about the fact that a 7-year-old child who had been terrorized into silence for 5 years saw something in me worth risking everything for. If Lily could see my worth when nobody else did, then maybe that worth was real. Maybe it had always been real. Maybe the only thing that had been wrong was the way I was taught to measure it. There is something I want to share with you before I end this story, something that has become clear to me over the past year through all the therapy and healing and growth. Sometimes the people who are silent have the loudest voices. They are just waiting for someone to listen. Lily was silent for 7 years, but she was never passive. She was observing, remembering, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment and the right person. Her silence was not emptiness. It was preparation. And when she finally spoke, her words changed everything. So I want to ask you something. Is there someone in your life who is being silent? Someone who might have a story to tell, a truth to share, a warning to give? If only someone would create the space for them to speak. Maybe it is a child who seems withdrawn. Maybe it is a friend who has stopped calling. Maybe it is a coworker who sits alone at lunch, or a neighbor whose curtains are always closed, or a family member who answers fine to every question. Listen to them. Really listen. Not with the intent to respond or fix or advise, but with the simple intention of understanding. Because sometimes a listening ear is all it takes. Sometimes one person paying attention can save a life. It saved mine. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it touched your heart, I would love to hear from you. Leave a comment telling me about someone in your life whose voice deserves to be heard. Hit that like button if you believe every child deserves to feel safe. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about resilience and redemption. And please share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Someone who might be feeling invisible. Someone who might be staying silent out of fear. Let them know they are not alone. Let them know their voice matters. Let them know that when the time is right, speaking up can change everything. Wherever you are tonight, I hope you feel seen. I hope you feel heard. And I hope you know that even in your darkest moments, there is someone out there who believes in you. Sometimes that someone is a 7-year-old girl who never forgot how it felt when you held her hand. Stay strong, stay hopeful, and never underestimate the power of finally telling your truth. This has been Camilla, and I will see you in the next story.